This touching tale involves hikers, a shelter, and a sheep struggling to stand due to out-of-control wool growth. One day, while exploring the wild terrain of Australia, a hiker discovered Chris, a sheep so heavily weighed down by his own fleece that he could barely stand. It was such a critical situation that even after help eventually arrived, the local shelter had to call in additional expertise. Don't forget to subscribe to The Unusual for more thrilling stories. While trekking through Mulligan's Flat, a renowned nature reserve on the outskirts of Canberra back in 2015, the hiker made this unexpected discovery. Known for its rich floral diversity, the reserve is a natural habitat for close to 150 different wildflower species. However, on this peculiar day, it wasn't the stunning flora that caught the hiker's attention. An out-of-place object, nearly the size of a compact vehicle and resembling a fluffy fallen nimbus, appeared in the hiker's sight. Upon closer examination, they realized it was alive and munching on grass. That's when they discovered that it was a stray sheep. The creature was in such a severe state of neglect that it had a greatly oversized coat, causing it difficulty with movement. Deeply concerned for the sheep's well-being, the hiker chose to act. They began to worry that the animal might not survive the intense Australian summer due to the excess of wool. The logical step was to contact the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in Australia, RSPCA. The organization immediately took responsibility for the creature, naming him Chris. Estimating from the growth of Chris's wool, the hypothesis was made that he might have been fending for himself in the wilderness for as long as 6 years, without any human interaction or shearing. However, Chris's oversized wool wasn't the only issue raising concern. There was a possibility that this massive covering hid harmful parasites or infections. Additionally, once knocked off balance, the hefty creature would have been unable to stand back up, which could have potentially led to a tragic end. To inspect Chris's overall health condition, the RSPCA was in dire need of a shearing expert and took to the internet to find one. Tammy Van Dang, the CEO of RSPCA in 2015, expressed to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, the need for immediate professional shearing help so that they could assess any severe medical conditions Chris might have developed as a result of his severely neglected state. Van Dang asserted that if Chris's wool was left unchecked, it might prove detrimental to his normal bodily functions. For instance, answering nature's call. The potential extent of possible harm remains unknown since the wool growth has been left unattended for quite some time. Untold complications may arise from this, yet the full extent will only be clear once Chris is appropriately groomed. At this point, in response to the appeal by the RSPCA, Ian Elkins stepped in to offer his professional support. Elkins was no ordinary individual. He was a celebrated figure in the realm of sheep shearing in Australia. Till that point, he had bagged the national championship 4 times. Yet Chris, with his colossal fleece, was potentially his most formidable opponent. The overwhelming wool made the job even more complex as it dragged Chris's skin down, raising the potential risk of wounds during the shearing process. More so, Chris's extensive period in the wilderness made him skittish around people. Therefore, Elkins's task was no less than monumental. As per Van Dang's interview with ABC, understanding the gravity of the situation, the shearing process demanded that Chris be tranquilized. Eventually, the wool-cutting session concluded without a hitch. Surprisingly, the shearing process set new global records, including the longest professional sheep shearing session, clocking in at a whopping 45 minutes. To give perspective, usual sheep shearing procedures do not exceed 2 minutes. Nevertheless, the true centerpiece of the event was Chris's overwhelming coat. At the end of the shearing, the wool weighed approximately 89 pounds, a staggering 8-fold increase compared to an average merino sheep. Consequently, Chris triumphantly etched his name in the record books for the highest volume of wool sheared from a sheep. Taking over from his predecessor, Big Ben, Chris claimed the title. Previously, Shrek the sheep held the coveted record. Resembling Chris, Shrek was left unattended, wandering in the New Zealand fields under a substantial fleece of nearly 60 pounds back in 2004. All things considered, Chris astonishingly outdid Shrek's record by almost 30 pounds, or the equivalent weight of a medium-sized dog. Elkins, with immense pride and joy, expressed to The Guardian back in 2015, "This achievement has virtually smashed the earlier record. Participating in this extraordinary event and ensuring the sheep's well-being is immensely gratifying." After the extraordinary shearing achievement, Chris's fleece found its permanent home at the National Museum of Australia in Canberra. It was exhibited to narrate and pay homage to the history of the sheep wool industry in the nation, and to underline the significance of animal well-being. Despite Chris's wool finding a worthy recipient, the fate of Chris himself remained unsettled. In September 2015, after a swarm of adoption offers from the public, Chris was at last transferred to Little Oak Sanctuary in Braidwood, New South Wales. However, Chris's story could be viewed as highlighting certain issues with how humans handle their fellow creatures. Traditionally, sheep would naturally shed their wool. However, modern practices involve selectively breeding the sheep to hold on to their coats for the sake of profiting off their fleece. Thankfully, in Chris's situation, he managed to thrive at Little Oak Sanctuary. At the start, when we brought him to the farm, he was quite subdued, but his personality has come out. Van Degg informed the Canberra Times in 2016. "He's now comfortable eating from a pail, he's growing more courageous around humans, and finally, he's having no difficulty sitting down."